Hello and welcome to Yerushalmi Peah, Daf Chav Vav. Two interesting points, one about agricultural know-how, and the other one, let's talk about the leopard. So the first thing is that the machlokas between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel here, the Gemara says that if you crowd in the seeds among big trees, so what does Beis Shammai say? It's not normal for people to introduce seeds, like grains and stuff, among trees. And the Mefarshim explain it's because the trees have shade and they mess up the seeds from planting, from growing properly, because they need a lot of sunlight and not shade. So it's fascinating because, again, we see that the Tanam and Amoraim, they understood science. And I know there's a big discussion, and this is beyond the scope of this conversation. Is it that they understood it from a Torah? Is it that they got the knowledge and they applied it? Some Sofer held that there was a large amount of knowledge that was gathered. Of course, it was known from Torah as well in some aspects, but also just knowing science was a very important thing. Chazon Ish had also similar shitas. I know people might get upset and say, well, that's not what Chazon Ish actually held. Chazon Ish has a very complex opinion about it, but basically, yes, there was a lot there from the Torah, but also just understanding science helped understand things. And again, the Gemara talks about moist onions. Do they get preserved properly, etc., etc.? So you see there's a tremendous amount of scientific knowledge. Let's come on to the Mishnah mentioned this idea of a menamer sadeu. If you make your field into patches, whether you give peah for one or multiple. Okay, so the Gemara says, what does the word menamer mean? So it says kahadein nimra. It means to make it like a spotted leopard. Okay, so I want to talk about the spotted leopard. So first I looked in, okay, where do you find the spotted leopard? So I figured, let's look in Parak Shira, but unfortunately it doesn't talk about a leopard there. So then I said, no, wait a minute. Have az kanamer? Let's go to that Mishnah. Of course it's that Mishnah, but I want to just quote a couple of things. So the leopard obviously is spotted, and the pasuk in Yerushalmi, Parak Yud Gimel, pasuk Chaf Gimel says, Hayapoch kushi oro. Could the dark person change his skin? Or v'namer chabar barosov, and could the leopard change its spots? So obviously you see that in these words of Chazal, the spots are considered kind of a negative thing. And again, if we think about it, the word kireach means spotted. Sometimes it's also used as an insult, but definitely having spots is something that's interesting. So let's go to the Mishnah in Perkei Avos and just do a little bit of a review, and we'll find some interesting things. So it's Perkei Mishnah Chaf. Yehuda ben Tema Omer, have az kanamer, v'kal kanesher v'ratz katzvi v'gibur kari. So seemingly it seems like you're supposed to borrow these attributes from the animals, and one of them is az kanamer. You should be brazen like the leopard. La'asos etzon v'chish r'shamayim. It's going to be an important phrase in a minute. To do the will of God. Huaya Omer. Also, Yehuda ben Tema used to say, az panam legehenim. Somebody that's brazen goes to hell. So wait a minute. You just said that I should be az kanamer. Now you're telling me az panam goes to hell. So which one is it? So obviously the answer is very simple. It's very clear that if you're az, and not with a panim part, by the way, which we'll talk about in a moment, if you're az and you have a brazenness for God, for Hashem, then that's correct. But if it's just stam az panim, which is brazenness, then that's where he goes to Gehenim. And again, the az panim means that on your face you show a brazenness towards inappropriate things, as opposed to az, that a person has a inner resolve. So az panim means haughtiness, that I'm brazen and haughty. But so that's what az panim is. And boshes panim means humility, and that's why the Mishnah continues, boshes panim l'gan eden. That's a good thing. So while you're a boshes panim, you could still be az kanamer, which means that when it comes to lasos on v'shishmayim, you have an internal resolve, and you're not embarrassed of anything. But again, we see that there's some element of embarrassment that it has, which is what the spots are. It's an embarrassment. And yet, it still is brazen. So I want to talk about that in a moment. Yehira Zalm Fanacha, very strange thing in the Mishnah. Hashem Elokeinu, Shetibana Ircha B'mher B'yameinu. Your city should be built in our days speedily. V'sencha Kenu B'sarasecha. Again, that's Lasos V'shon V'chish Hashmayim. That you have to have the right intention. Hashem, I'm doing this for you. I want your Beis HaMikdash to be just rebuilt from the place of destruction that it's in right now. And Sencha Kenu B'sarasecha, I want you to give us a portion in your Torah. This is beyond the scope that Mishnayos, if they were written in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, was standing. So what's going on? Obviously, this was added later. But the point is that is the antidote for Lasos V'shon V'chish Hashmayim. So listen to the Rav. Very fascinating Rav. You might not have known this. So the word leopard obviously comes from the root of Leo, leopard. So Leo is a lion. So we know that a lion, it's in the same cat family. That we knew. But I bet you didn't know this. Azkanamer, says the Rav, the leopard, was born from a forest pig and from a lavia, which is a female lioness. Why? What happens? Because the lioness, wanted to get pregnant, and so she puts her head into the forest, and she is tovas, the zachar, and she sees this chazir. So it hears her, and it lives with her, and then the number comes out. Now it's a mamzer, and therefore it's azpanim, which Chazal say that azpanim is a mamzer, which we'll talk about in a minute. So even though it has no gevura at all, it's still azpanim. Now again, things that are created out of taiva are usually defective, so that's why the Eishes Sifas Torah is usually a Metzora Mora, an element that there's a defect. It wasn't a healthy marriage. It wasn't a healthy connection. So you should be brazen to ask your Rebbe questions if you don't understand. Goes Janino Lo Abai Shalomad, and that's the pshat. Okay, so Agav, if you look at the Rav, it's a nice pshat about Tikkun based on English. So I want to go to 2 points. So one of them is that's the pshat. The pshat is that you have to be uz kanamar. The namar has so many things against it. It's a mamzer because its mother was with a different animal. It's I wouldn't say it's a ben nida, which we'll get to in a second, but there's something wrong with it. Okay, so it's actually probably not a ben nida because the most lionesses when they are in heat, so they are actually ovulating. So, but we'll come back to that in a minute. That's why I said it. But the point is that it's a defective animal, at least according to the Rav. Certainly, there's something wrong with it. And certainly, it has spots. But nonetheless, it's still a brazen animal. And so that's how we have to serve Hashem. Even if we look in the mirror sometimes and we feel defective, we can't have any embarrassment. We say, we charge ahead and do the right thing. That's how I believe the pshat is. And that's Menamer Sedeo. So I want to say 2 more things. One of them is that, often we look at these animals and we say, okay, that's a cool animal. Oh, by the way, it fits into this Mishnah, Menamer Sedeo. No. The Rebbeinu Shalom Chazal say that, like more in Erevin, Bavli, that if Hashem wouldn't have given the Torah, we would learn different midos, different animals. So we would learn Torah concepts from all the animals. We have to see Hashem from the world around us. So the pshat is that Hashem created the leopard so we can understand this Mishnah of what Hamanamar Sedeo means, what it means to create it like spots. And there are many lessons to learn from these animals, and this is one of them. Agav, the Beis Yosef brings down, the Torah opens up with Yudim and Tema. This is so important, this memra. Okay, last thing I want to leave you off with some Makomos. Take a look at Maseches Kala, Perek Sheni, where Yehuda says, Az Panim Legehenim, and by the way, it should say Yehuda ben Tema, but that's obviously this Mishnah. Bosh Panim Legan Eden, Az Panim Rav Eliezer says he's a mamzer. Yeshua says Ben Nida, and Rav Akiva says it's a mamzer and Ben Nida. I have so much to say about Rav Akiva. He says it's both. So then there's a story that 2 kids walked by. One of them covered their head in order to show respect for the rabbis, and one of them uncovered it. So each one of them said their opinion. Reb Yehuda said, Rav Eliezer said that kid's a mamzer. Rav Yeshua said he's a ben nida, and then Rav Akiva said he's a mamzer. Agav, Rav Eliezer and Rav Yeshua were the 2 rabbeim of Rav Akiva, but it seems like they became colleagues because there's a different girsa here of chavercha, your friends, or Rabbosecha, your rabbis. Ayin Sham. Perek Sheni. Anyway, so they said to Rav Akiva, "You're wrong. How could you say that? It's only," but really Rav Akiva was saying like both of them. So Rav Akiva asked the mother, and actually Ayin Sham, there's a lot of details about that, but he asked her, and she said, "Yes, I was a nida when I got married, and I slept with a shushvin, and this child came out." So it's right. He was a mamzer and a ben nida. Rav Moshe Feinstein brings this as one of his proofs that if somebody is dating a girl, or vice versa, and finds out that she was a bas nida, that it's mutter to marry her if she has good midos. Because he says, you see from Chazal, they have bad midos. Agav, Stipler also says a similar thing in Yevamos. I've talked about this before. In Likutim, he has a letter where he writes about this very similar svar, and also brings a couple of Mar Makomos. He brings down, I believe, actually only one other Mar Makom that's well known about this topic, but he basically says the exact same thing. But you see from Chazal that people that are created out of Taiva don't have very good midos, which makes sense because, like the Ramban says in Geras HaKodesh, that the parents influence the child. And yet, Afal Pikein, Az Panim, we have to, not Az Panim, sorry, Az Kanamar, we have to take that one midah of the Namer, and despite the deficiencies that we all have, we have to serve Hashem with our full strength and vigor without any embarrassment. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.